I want to extend my deepest appreciation to Ms. Demetria Kaladimas for moderating our event this evening, and to our esteemed panel on stage now, and those that will come later for our reentry panel as well. We're grateful for your time to engage in this very important conversation. My name is Tim Leeper, and I know that many in the audience have met me, sent me messages. They have engaged with me through our shared and lived experiences. I've had many people ask me over the last few months about this town hall and what did we hope to accomplish, and my answer is simple. We hope for meaningful dialogue tonight. We hope for dialogue that leads to understanding, that leads to empathy for change. Our mission is not about apologizing and making excuses for criminal behavior, nor is it about the abolition of our prisons. Our mission is to advocate for those offenders being thrown into the lion's den that we call prison. With the rise of overdoses, high death rates, extortion to our families, and the lack of meaningful rehabilitation in all of our prisons, we need legislators to hear our need for oversight and accountability in the Tennessee Department of Corrections. We're not asking for softer mats or better pillows for these guys. We're asking for dignity and a better use of the time spent inside these prison walls. As I turn this program over to Rusty Richardson in just a moment, I would just like to ask one thing for the people that are here in attendance. If you're a family member of an inmate that has died in a Tennessee prison, would you please stand up and remain standing just for a minute? For those that have stood, I appreciate you being here. I appreciate your time. You can go ahead and sit down, but I just wanted people to see the meaning behind why we're here. These people that are standing represent loved ones that no longer have a voice. And so this is why we're here tonight, and this is what the town hall is about. Thank you again for your time and your presence to be here. And I'll turn it over to Mr. Rusty Richardson.
Thank you, Tim. On behalf of Cumberland University, on behalf of our president, Paul C. Stum, our board of trust, and our record number of new students here this fall, we're going to be right at 3,500 students, the largest we've ever been in our 184-year history. I want to welcome you to our campus. I know many of the faces and many of the people in the room have been in this room 100 times. But for some of you, this may be your first time on our campus. But we're so glad you're here. We are so glad that we can share this space with members of our community to talk about important issues that we face as a society, as a nation, as a people. And we are so glad to partner with Tim and Sue Ann on this very noble cause to help a problem that so many of you are so much more aware of than I am even, that plagues our country. And that's what do we do with our correction system. So we appreciate you being here. We welcome you. We encourage you to come back to program after program after program at Cumberland University. And now I'm happy to turn it over to our moderator, Demetria.
Thank you so much.
Give her a big hand.
Thank you, everyone, for coming out this evening. Let's get a better idea of our audience, okay? By hands. Who has a loved one currently incarcerated? Okay. At a core civic prison? Do we have anyone who has been incarcerated there at Trousdale Turner? All right. Anyone who has worked at that facility? And has anyone here, well, we saw the hands before, lost their loved one to violence or drugs inside? Okay. You know who our panelists are because their bios are in our program, so I'm going to get right to it. We've got two veterans on the stage tonight. That's a nice way of saying older guys. But I am curious, Sheriff Ash and Commissioner Norris, when did you first begin dealing with private prison providers, and were things different? What was the value proposition initially?
The idea of privatizing some prisons in Tennessee was just beginning to be discussed when I was commissioner. And so as commissioner, I never dealt directly with a private facility. But it was an idea that, that then the company called Correction Corporation of America started. And it was given serious consideration in the 4 years that I was there, but it didn't really get implemented until after I left. So.
Were you skeptical?
Pardon me?
Were you skeptical?
Yes.
Why?
The value set tends to worry me a little bit. In the public sector, there are always performance and budgetary pressures, but it occurred to me that the budgetary pressures would be more acute in a private setting, and that concerned me a little bit. Now, I'm not suggesting that those can't be overcome, because they can, but as a primary consideration, as a primary driver of how you manage your operations on a day-to-day basis, that's the wrong thing to be pegging success against.
Sheriff, did you have dealings with the old CCA?
Unfortunately. But in '85, I was president of the Sheriff's Association, and we were in a special session for overcrowding, kind of like we are now. History has a way of repeating itself when you don't correct it. So you might say I was in the room. The sheriffs in the state were very much opposed to it at the time, and I expressed my opinion. We worked with the legislature when we got into our regular session. As you remember, you were there all that time. So, you know, the jury's kind of still out on private prisons, especially with the problems we got today. And but at the time, yeah, I was in a very skeptical mindset about it.
John Ray, welcome home, by the way. Lebanon boy.
Thank you.
Did you start getting calls from the minute you entered office?
Well, I started getting calls the minute I got my law license. And as you know, I brought lawsuits against the old CCA, and now they've changed their name for branding purposes and otherwise because of so many issues. But yeah, the second I got into public office, I started getting emails from families concerned about what was happening to their family members or loved ones who were in Charlesville Turner, one of the other facilities, and across the state. And the single biggest request I get from constituents is trying to get their loved ones transferred out of CCA into a state-run facility.
Representative Boyd?
Demetria, my first interaction with corrections or core civic was last year when my friend Tim Leeper came to me. And so I just had no interaction with him with any of the committees or any legislation. And he really peeled back, you know, the layers and showed me what was going on there. And even not having much experience with it, you don't have to have a lot of experience to recognize a problem when you see it. When, you know, there are 4 prisons, they account for literally half of the deaths, 2/3 of the accidental deaths, and almost all of the riots and uprisings that go on. So we clearly have a problem here. And I think politically speaking, we had kind of ceded the ground to my colleagues on the other side of the aisle. And I think this was really the first time that a Republican had decided to champion something like this. And I worked with Senator Pody. And what I found was nobody likes private prisons. Once I stepped forward and started carrying the legislation, it was unanimous. Every committee we went to, it was 100% of the Republicans, 100% of the Democrats. We were lockstep in step on this, that we all agreed that there was a problem and we needed changes in this state.
So why is this contract so ironclad? And doesn't the contract, correct me if I'm wrong, limit it to 1 prison?
It does, and apparently they work around it by working with the local, usually the sheriff's department, to basically get additional private prisons. And when I first brought this up with some members of leadership, they said, yeah, man, we all agree something needs to be done. But the amount of funding to build a new prison, to get them out of there, we would have to get started on it now, and it would likely take, 5 to 7 years. I'm just throwing a number out to get that done. Tim has mentioned to me, Tim's put a lot of work into this and given me various ideas, and he said, what if we started drawing down the population now and moving them out? Or another scenario that I don't think is a terrible idea is let Core Civic be a landlord. Let them own the prison. Let's staff it with Tennessee Department of Corrections, employees, wardens, cooks, all of the medical staff, everyone that works there. Make them Department of Corrections employees with the amount of oversight and accountability that we have on the other prisons, and let Core Civic draw rent on their facility. I don't have a problem with that. But I think that hiring prison guards and I don't know the wage, but it's a pretty low wage. It's an hourly wage, and a lot of times they're hiring drug runners and gang members to basically operate as prison guards, and that's not a good scenario. When you have a situation like that, it's no surprise that we have riots and uprisings.
Commissioner Norris, you know a thing or two about riots and uprisings. And that was under TDOC in the 80s.
That is correct.
How did you get out of it? Because you did turn it around.
Say again?
You did turn it around. What was the secret of solving the overcrowding? Was it the court intervention?
The court intervention actually helped quite a bit because it allowed us to stabilize the system. And I'm sure you remember this. We had a wide open system back then, and if a sheriff's department decided they wanted to send me an inmate, I had to take them, whether or not I had a bed. And so the system was badly overcrowded. And if you overcrowd a prison system, it's not a question of what's going to happen, it's just a question of when. The thing that allowed us to, there were two critical events that allowed us to stabilize. One, believe it or not, we had 4 disturbances within 24 hours throughout the prison system, pretty serious ones. But we finally shut it down. But it allowed us to, in effect, reestablish some controls that we had lost with the inmate population, number one. Number two, Judge Higgins, who at that time had the federal court suit against the Tennessee Department of Correction, essentially said through court order, if you don't have a bed, you can't take an inmate. And so it allowed us to stabilize the population. And then in the latter part of 1985, we had a special session on correction. Governor Alexander called a special session. The legislature met. We passed a comprehensive sentencing reform bill, plus enough appropriation to build 2 new prisons, plus enough of appropriations where we could improve salaries and improve training. And so those sort of benchmark events allowed us to turn the system around, and when I left 4 years later, we were in pretty decent shape.
Sheriff?
I think Steve said it right, but when they shut down taking inmates, we backlogged them all up in county jails who were really not prepared for that kind of influx of inmates. So they probably would have gotten a lot better care in the state system as to back them up in the county jails. And then the local taxpayers had to come in and build more jails, and it was a ripple effect. But there's 3 times that prisons and jails get in trouble. The first one is when they're overcrowded. The second one's when they're overcrowded, and the third is when they're overcrowded. Because after that, everything falls apart. The staffing, the food, the medical, the care. And I found it a little strange reading some of the reports where they had X number of accidental deaths. Listen, I run a jail for 30 years and then helped teach sheriffs how to run jails for 7 years after that. I might have had an accidental death or 2. You can't fall out of that many bunks in a year. I mean, I don't understand the way they categorized that in that survey. I'm sure the autopsy reports would say something, but it just looks like just kind of glazing over. It's not the way to do this.
Representative Clemens, what are the chances, the snowball's chances of having a special session on correction?
Not very strong, and especially not with this administration. I mean, there's been really, until this year, and thanks to Tim's leadership and working across the aisle finally on this issue, We haven't really had any receptive partners talking about this, the inherent problems with privatized prisons. I mean, these gentlemen know more about corrections than I'll ever learn. They've forgotten more than I'll ever learn. And, you know, but we all know that there are three aims to the penal system: punishment, deterrence, and rehabilitation. When profit enters the equation, rehabilitation's gone. And that is an inherent problem with the system. And profit drives all the decision making. It drives the contract. It results in the harm to these citizens. It cuts cost, medical care, mental health care, which a lot of inmates have, as these gentlemen know, needs for mental health care issues, and the security goes down. And the reality is the state of Tennessee, we just passed a bill to increase the starting salary for corrections officers. CoreCivic has the money to pay adequate wages, a living wage with benefits to their security personnel. You know, they just signed a brand new contract for $168 million for 3 years over in West Tennessee. So this isn't a money shortage issue. It's a desire to do right by the people they have a duty to house and rehabilitate.
Let's talk a little bit about transparency, or the lack of. I can tell you as a reporter, there was a time that if an inmate had a desire to talk to the media, they made a call to a newsroom, and we came out with a camera, and they were given a chance to speak to us. We might or might not run it, but that offer was there. I cannot remember, for one thing, I don't think a camera has ever been inside Trousdale Turner. And secondly, they are not responsive to media inquiries, and I can only imagine family inquiries. How can you run this proposition when one side is not being straight with the public or lawmakers or the media?
Well, I'll go again. The last time we did a surprise visit, Mayor Lee Harris, who's Shelby County Mayor now, Lee Harris and I, when he was a state senator, we did a surprise visit to the Trousdale Turner facility. They always said in committee, "Oh, y'all come out there, y'all are welcome anytime." So, my God, we walked out there and we went in, and you were there. And they wouldn't let you up the driveway.
Right.
You had to sit a mile down the road up there, and they wouldn't let you anywhere near. And then they held us in that waiting room for about 2 hours while they whitewashed everything before they let us in. And the reality is they're doing these contracts. As you said, their state law allows one private prison. And so they circumvent that against the spirit of the law by contracting with the counties and the locals. And that's why there's 4 private prisons in the state of Tennessee instead of 1. Now, when they do that, they don't report everything, like Sheriff Ash said. Those contract monitors aren't reporting everything to the Commissioner of Corrections. I guarantee it. And they're whitewashing those reports. There's a fiscal conflict of interest there, as you know, and so all that information, whatever's happening at that facility, is not getting out of that facility to even the Commissioner. To answer your earlier question, I don't believe the Commissioner of Corrections knows everything that's happened in those facilities because they're not reporting accurately like they're supposed to under their contracts.
We have sat, though, in those audits where a litany of violations are read, and then they culminate in fines. Are those fines actually money that comes out of the pocket of CoreCivic, or are they just numbers that are taken off a running tab? How does it work? Do we know?
No, I don't turn down a microphone. Well, the reality is they've got an insurance pool, and they've got a pool of money that they know, and these are liquidated damages. They cut my mic now. So they operate under contracts, whether it's with the local and the one with the state, of course. And so under that contract, there's provisions for liquidated damages. So they're pulling those liquidated damages out of their, reserve money pile and just paying those. And it's embarrassing how small those liquidated damages are. And what's more embarrassing is that the state of Tennessee rings them up for these breaches, whether it's overcrowding, whether it's understaffing, or whatever the lapse is. Even though they've got all these deaths behind their prison walls, they're only liquidated damages in the amount of $1 million, $2 million, $3 million. But even then, the state keeps contracting with them. They ignore that and just re-up with them in a higher amount every time, with provisions in there that make no sense, like minimum inmate population. So we have to keep a certain population in that facility, so they're guaranteed that money. So this money is just coming, this is change, pocket change to them, what they're paying the state of Tennessee in liquidated damages.
And Demetri, I can't prove this. I've never seen a financial audit of it, but I would suggest that they probably factor that in. There's with these violations, there's a cost risk analysis, and they know that they're going to win some and lose some, and they budget in. Most likely, the fines that they pay are budgeted into their operating costs, which subsequently get billed to the state. So I think it's unfortunate that it works that way, but I think all of us from the outside looking in, it's pretty obvious that that's what's going on.
I think I want to be fair about this. We need to take into consideration all those good correctional officers who are doing their job out there every day. It is absolutely the hardest job in the criminal justice system. But it's a little bit unconscionable for them not to listen to the good employees about the advice and concerns that are going on that I read in a particular audit. Because that's where you get your best advice. If you're going to be the administrator, you're going to be the leader, you need to listen to the people under you too. And you got to kind of weed through that. So I just want everybody to know there's a lot of good officers over there working hard, but there's some there that don't need to be there. And, you know, not to regress off the money side of it, but there's 2 times an inmate really gets classified. When they first come into the system and when they're going into reentry. There's a lot of time in between that, more can be done. For me, I love the GED program. I did one at the jail when I was there. But trades is where I focus on reentry. Learning how to be an electrician, a plumber, a carpenter, a brick mason. Those type of things need to be factored into the prison system. That way when they get out, when they re-enter the society, they got at least something they can fall back on to keep them out of the facility. But the prison system is tough. It's hard to manage, probably the toughest job in state government. And I've been a deputy commissioner, the chief of staff of safety. I mean, I know what it's like to have to be down there. But they're going to have to look at this really hard because all these people can't be wrong. And they need to hear from people about what they want to see changed. And so, Tim, this is good. Of course, we're friends, but I mean, this is a good environment to get your message out.
There are 2 or 3 things that I know for sure. The responsibility of any prison system or any correctional system that houses inmates that are serving a sentence is that you have to create an environment where rehabilitation is possible. If you've got a lot of internal turmoil and you essentially have inmates that are essentially in an arms race, they're trying to figure out how to make a weapon, rehabilitation is not possible. Secondly, the 2 most important principles in managing public organizations are accountability and visibility. So the question then becomes, how do we get from where we are right now to where we need to be, which is a long way down the road. And there's nothing quick about any of this. Because once a prison starts badly, it is enormously difficult to turn it around. So from a policy perspective, what I would strongly recommend, and Tim and I have talked about this before, is when I was commissioner, there was an entity in the legislature called the Correction Oversight Committee. Bob Rochelle, who was a senator from right here in Lebanon, was the chairman of it. He used to tear the hide off me routinely in committee meetings. But the committee was made up of both House and Senate members. A lot of the leadership, minority leader and majority leader from both houses, participated in and they met once a month, sometimes for 2 days. And it was from my perspective, when I first started working in that environment, it was enormously time-consuming. But I soon learned that there was a lot of value there because it enhanced the accountability factor. We were being held accountable monthly for what was going on in that prison system by the legislative leadership. And I would strongly recommend that the state legislature recreate that committee because it can lead to improvements in the prison system, in the correction system, and in the private sector as long as that facility exists. That it's there. It's not going to go away anytime soon, so we might as well fix it. But you can't fix it unless those accountability factors are there. And a good way to cause that to occur is with that oversight committee.
Senator Pody, thanks for making it. We appreciate it. Welcome. We're talking about the demise of the Prison Oversight Committee. How did that come about, and is it helping anyone?
Thank you. And I do apologize for being late. One of the main things I'm working on is traffic in Nashville, and I got caught in that on the way here. But
We hear you.
So I was actually involved a little bit in some of these oversights. There was a lot of oversight boards that we did away with about a dozen years ago. And we're in the process of looking back to say, did we make some mistakes? And I think we did. One of them is the Prison Oversight Board. We've actually got a couple pieces of legislation already filed looking to bring an oversight board back. In fact, last year we did pass one, and it was to be watching to say, how are we sentencing our prisoners? What is happening? Are they getting the credits and such? That's not fully functional at this point. It's had some snags, but I believe that the board's fully functional at this point. They got everybody appointed to it, and I would like to see a much stronger oversight board in our prison systems right now, and I'm advocating for that.
John Ray, you and I talked about the newly formed oversight board that looks into good time credits and how many are granted, how many are taken away. I think it has a pretty extraordinary unrealized fiscal note attached now in terms of the added time. What's your opinion? Is that idea working? Is that suitable oversight?
No, it's wholly unfit for the job which it was assigned, and it's costing Tennessee taxpayers a lot of money, and it's more bureaucracy on top of bureaucracy. And we hear a lot of talk about big government. Well, that is big government, because now there are 2, if not 3, agencies or commissions doing the exact same thing. And one, as you know, that we discussed, the one to which you referred, no one on that committee has any experience in corrections. They have no experience in any of this. And so, you know, the reason we don't have an oversight committee, we don't have a TennCare oversight committee, we don't have corrections oversight, is because those are inherent problems when one party runs the entire government in all 3 branches, because nobody wants oversight over their own friends or political allies. And that's an inherent problem with a one-party system like we have right now. So, I mean, I think if we really wanted a correction oversight committee or an accountability level like that in the legislature, if we elected a Democratic governor, you'd see one overnight. And so that's something that we're just going to have to change. And I appreciate Senator Pody's leadership on this and pushing for this oversight, because it's badly needed, not only in corrections, but a lot of other areas.
Show of hands, how many family members have had extortion calls or requests for money to be paid for safety of their person inside? This just seems to be an across-the-board complaint. How can this criminal enterprise be stopped? Is it possible? Because it seems like they're reaching out into the community and polluting what's happening outside with families that are trying to be patient.
I'll take a shot at this.
Okay.
If I were in a position to make these decisions, here's what I would do. I would draw that current census of the correctional facility down to its bare minimum. In other words, what you'd have are low custody or low custody inmates who function as sort of the prison cadre: cooks, carpenters, masons, plumbers, folks who a warden would normally call on to help you manage the facility. First, you got to draw that census down and get control of it. Secondly, I would revet and retrain every single person in that facility. Now, while I was doing that on a parallel basis, I would be gathering information about those extortion issues. Because sooner or later, if you keep pushing, if you keep peeling back the layers, whether it's with the correctional officers are with the inmates, you're gonna find where it's coming from. And once you find where it's coming from, you can then do something about it. Because that is wholly inappropriate. You're going through enough having a loved one in a correctional facility. You shouldn't be extorted. That is just wrong.
But look at the fear that the families have to face when they get that call, because they can't get in to talk to them or share any time with them. And I'm big on, I was all the time I was sheriff, monitoring those phone calls that come out of there 24/7 to cut down on some of that. It happens in county jails too, but think about being a family member and you get an extortion call, basically, and it happens every day, right on down to commissary, whatever they can use for collateral, that's what's done. It's not an easy system to run, but that extortion part, every district attorney, I'm sure, in the state just dealt with it on a local level, or if they got a prison in their district, they need to be looking at that for prosecution of those people.
I visited a lot of our prisons. And Sheriff, I've never gotten a call from a local county where somebody was saying that they were extorted. So hats off to the counties. I'm going to tell you there's other states that do prison a whole lot better than Tennessee. Most of the time I'm going to tell you, wow, Tennessee's on top of their game. In prisons, we're on the bottom. We have laws that if I'm sitting here and this gentleman that I serve with right here, Representative Clemson, if we're in the same car and I say, I want to drop out and I'm going to go get something to eat, and I rob a liquor store, I jump back in the car with him, he had no idea what I was doing, and we're caught, he's arrested just like me, and he's going to prison. So if he goes to prison, when he gets there, he's going to be met by gang members. He doesn't want to be there. He doesn't deserve to be there. But the way that we're currently sentencing, he is stuck there. He wants to get out. He doesn't want to do anything but find a way to live in a productive society. But we're going to house him in the same pod. And if there's going to be somebody going to be extorted, he's going to be calling his family. Or if it's reversed, I'm calling for help. It's my life. Y'all know exactly what I'm talking about. We've got to find a way to have pods saying, if you want to be a gang member, you're going to be sit over here. But if you are just here doing your time, you're doing everything you can to get the positive credits that you can get out, get back to your family, get back to the jobs. You need to be in an honor pod. We've got some of those. They need to be statewide. We've got to take some of the models that Florida and Tennessee or Texas have done and implement them here. I think the results would more than pay for itself here in Tennessee.
Last I checked, Trousdale was considered a medium security institution. Do they need to completely reclassify everyone sitting inside of there to make sure they meet that criteria?
They do.
And time flies when you're having fun like this, but I've got one last question. With this being a born and bred Tennessee company, Tennessee idea, with a lot of shareholders who have made a lot of money off of it, what are the chances that the state of Tennessee would cut off or punish the company that they grew up from the roots?
I think it's possible. But before it's possible, you have to do exactly what I was talking about earlier. There has to be that heightened level of transparency. There has to be that heightened level of oversight. And until that is done, until the proper questions are asked, the state of Tennessee has to maneuver itself into a position where if the company doesn't respond and doesn't get its act together, then the state of Tennessee will be left with no choice. And that's the tripwire, no choice. You've got to do it. They're not performing, you have no choice. The public interests are at stake, and you have to pull the contract. but you gotta have the political will to do it.
Exactly right. What's missing here is leadership with courage. That's all it takes, is the right people making the right decisions in the best interest of Tennesseans. You have to have a governor that's willing to cut those contracts, that one contract. And you also have to have local governments that stop entering into these contracts to circumvent that one private prison law. And unfortunately, as we sit here today, let's not ignore the reality. Money is an issue in politics. We've got 2 U.S. senators who've taken almost $60,000 from Core Civic in the last 2 years alone. You've got congressmen who've done the same thing. You've got a governor who's done the same thing, and other politicians. So once you eliminate that and the will for them to be here, you've got to make those tough decisions. And that requires courage. And that is what is lacking in Tennessee right now.
One final thing. I spent 26 years working for the state of Tennessee. I spent through 5 different administrations. And what I know for sure is if you can create a good enough case, if you can create an environment where tough decisions are necessary, then those decisions will get made. But you have to create the environment where that's doable.
All right. I'm going to tell you, I want to separate 2 issues here, okay? First, Core Civic, and then the prisons in general. And Core Civic's here, and you mentioned profits, and people have gotten rich. Representative Boyd and I actually cut and wrote a bill and passed it to say we want to cut some of their profits. And they have less people in Trousdale at this point. And because of that, if we look at what the numbers have happened, they've lost hundreds of prisoners. We know that Core Civic's CEO has stepped down. There's a new one that just started. We know that the warden up in Trousdale is no longer there.
A new one was named about 2 days ago.
That's exactly right. And if we look at their staffing, all right, for the first time, with the people that they have in training, they're finally investing the money to at least get the staffing to where it should have been originally. My problem with the state is this: they had fines. They were caught on many issues before, and they weren't enforced. All right? So I got an issue that if we did it and they didn't uphold their end of the contract, we did not enforce what they did. But my issue isn't just with Core Civic. I believe that the entire state, our entire prison system needs to be revamped. I believe we need that oversight system. And the time to do it is now.
Okay, we're about to talk reentry. Gentlemen, you can step down for a little while, and we'll bring up our second panel, give you a little break. And audience, remember, we've got plenty of time in here for audience Q&A, so if something is just digging at you, write it down or remember it, because you're going to have a chance. All right, our reentry folks. Thank you. We've got Mike White, Robert Sherrill, DeMarcus Foster, and Thomas Snow. We're waiting for some, okay. All right, gentlemen, thank you so much for taking time to be with us tonight. I want to take you all back to day one when you walked out. What did you have lined up? What did you lack? What did you feel like?
Thank you for having us this evening. I can remember I went to federal prison, so I was released in 2013. And the one thing that I had, which was a blessing, is I had a plan. I realized that a lot of people don't have a plan, so I was blessed in that regard. But again, I I was released to a place called Dismas Charities, Dearson Charities. It is a 808 Lee Avenue. It's for federal inmates. So when you get out, you have to go to this place. And I remember getting there, and of course, you can't work for yourself. You got to go find a job. So the second day out, I went and found a job at Maggiano's Little Italy on West End. And then I got a second job at Demos, because who wants to sit around in the halfway house all day when you be in prison for X amount of years? So with that being said, I had nothing. I can remember being afraid because I didn't know what I was going to do when I got out. Again, knowing the negative stigma with having a felony on your record, I knew it was going to be hard to find employment. And so when I got out, the only thing I was able to do was bust tables because, again, being a felon, you can't even be a server. At least being a server, you can make enough tips, but they won't even allow you to serve. So I was reduced to the food runner. So if you ever been to Maggiano's, I was the guy that came to your table to clear the plates and bring you hot bread and olive oil. That's what I was reduced to once I was released.
Were those employers willing to hire you? Had they been prepared for you, or did you just go in cold?
The frustrating part about this, and I advocate for second chance employers all the time, is that they used me being on probation and being at the halfway house against me, because instead of paying me what I was worth, they reduced my payment because being in the federal halfway house, whenever you get there in the morning or whenever you start your shift, you have to call and they have to talk to a manager. And before you leave for the night, when you get off, they have to call and talk to someone again. And because of that, they were able to pay me subpar and reduce me down because they knew I needed the job. I had no choice. If it's either get a job or you don't get to go home, like you have to literally stay in the halfway house.
So you had a plan. How about you guys?
So I agree with him. When I got ready to get released, the first thing I had to have was a plan. And a lot of times when people get released, they don't have a plan. And it's hard to think of a plan when you're inside there, when riots are going on, when you're getting extorted, when there's turmoil. You can't think of a plan when the prisons are not being run correctly. So I had a plan when I came home. So I ended up acquiring a trade. And through a trade, I was able to work my way up through the construction industry. So I started as a helper, just as he started as a food runner. I started as a helper, worked my way up to a superintendent, from superintendent to foreman. So now I'm a project manager. So I run some of the larger jobs in Nashville. It all started with a plan. So it all starts with a plan.
That sounds like on-the-job training, though. Did you get anything inside that would prepare you?
Absolutely not. So it's one of those deals, man. You really have to be self-determined. You really have to have that self-determination. And if you don't, and self-determination is not, everybody doesn't have it. So if you're not in the system to where you're learning soft skills, where you're learning coping skills, where you're learning anger management, if you're not learning those things, man, when you come out, that's why the recidivism rate is so high. But you have to have that self-determination.
I must be out of place because I've been to 14 state prisons, but I've never been incarcerated in my life. So I'm here because I direct a large reentry program and a transitional house, and we work with men and women across the state that are in prisons, and we help them when they come out to rehabilitate themselves and to reintegrate with the community. We also have programs in the prisons across Tennessee working with the men and women while they're there.
Is there anything that's foolproof that you know if you offer it and someone takes it to heart and takes it, that there are results?
There are results, and we have many programs that we offer, but at the end of the day, the person has to want it. They have to have that internal desire. And so you can have rehab centers, you can have reentry programs, and all of these things are great. But at the end of the day, that person has to have that internal motivation that says, you know, I'm ready to do something different with my life. What I've been doing has not worked for me, and I'm willing to consider something different. And when you reach that point in life, you're at a teachable moment, and then we do see significant success.
Here's a question, Thomas. For family members, how can they help their inmate prepare and have the right mindset inside when, as we said, so much chaos is going on and so many temptations and chances to do wrong?
it is very difficult, no doubt, particularly when you have somebody that's very young that goes into prison 18, 19, 20 years old. They often become a victim themselves inside the walls. One of the things is that there are people in every prison. There's men in the men's prison, women in the women's prison that are trying to do the right thing. You need to associate yourself with them. Find yourself those that are trying to really be about something different. There's a lot of church groups, religious groups that are there. I encourage that strongly for them to get involved among a faith-based group. That will help them. They need to take all the classes they can take. They've now rolled out tablets in our state prisons. There is a lot of programming that's on the tablets. And so anything that you can do to start thinking about your life, thinking about changing your thinking, that's where it has to start. Any of that is very helpful. There's some things that can't be controlled. You know, sometimes you want your son or daughter moved to a different prison, and they'll call me and say, what can you do to help get my son moved? And I'll say, honestly, not anything. And just do a lot of praying and encouraging and make a lot of phone calls. The more you say something about it, the more likely something will get done.
Man, let's just be real. Anybody else seen Gladiator? All right. You know how you take people who don't know nothing about being a gladiator and then throw them in the arena? This is what we're dealing with. That's why there are not a lot of successful reentry stories out there. That's why I've did all of this stuff, but that's an anomaly. I mean, I hate it's don't clap, because my story should be the exception, and this should be the standard and not the exception. That's the issue. There should be millions and millions of Robert Sherrills and my brother right here, but it's not. Why? Because that's why we're here. Let's forget the fluff. Let's talk about it. Prison is gladiator school. You either strong or you're not. And if you notice in Gladiator, they didn't get stronger until they click up. So that's why gangs are so prevalent. You gotta survive. It's not normal to wake up every day in a fight or flight state. I was in federal prison and I've been through some rough stuff, but I'm telling you, in a constant state of fight or flight, what that does to your psyche. And at the same time, they're telling you that you about to be released and you ain't got no job, you ain't got nowhere to go, you ain't got no loved ones, and you ain't got no money. So how are we supposed to deal with that and then at the same time get out and be successful? Not only that, we're dealing with a for-profit system. I'm a business owner. I got 37 employees. You know what matters to me? I love my employees, but I'm looking at every day, I'm on QuickBooks looking at that bottom line. Because guess what? Unlike me, these corporations, they have shareholders that they have to go and give account to. So how are we in a for-profit system, but we also dealing with a criminal justice system where they are being lobbied to pass laws to keep us longer so they can make money, but all of this is supposed to be legal? And then you wonder why we can't find jobs. Dude, I am 42 years old. I've been pardoned by the governor and the president, and I still have people looking at me sideways. I'm not happy that I'm the only person that was able to get my rights back. This should be normative. Half the people in here, as much as they done, I done worked with half of these people. They some model citizens. They made a mistake 20 years ago, and they still out here struggling to find employment, finding places to live. Last but not least, I was making six figures a year in 2016. And just for a case study, I went downtown to try to get a one-bedroom apartment. Remember, I'm making about $15,000 after taxes a month. Good credit. I couldn't even get a one-bedroom apartment. So what am I supposed to do? Where am I supposed to work when the bylaws and the corporations say we can't hire him because he don't fit our profile? And remind you, I'm a non-violent drug offender. So you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna go back to doing something that's gonna make me some money. Why? Because I got kids to feed. And the stuff that we feed these people is bullshit. Because you telling you get out and you're gonna be successful. No, you're not. It's gonna be a struggle and you're gonna get more no's than yeses. And that's why recidivism rates are so high.
And I think the reason why we all here, if we could, is because of core civic, right? So when I heard one of the gentlemen before refer to as core civic liquidated damages. We live in a messed up society when you can see a person and see a liquidated damage. We are not liquidated damages. We are people. We are human beings. We are lives. We're not liquidated damages. So when we have a corporation that can write us off for $1 million or write that inside the budget, that's wrong. And if we have a prison model, I took some notes right here. Core Civic's business model depends on full beds. So when you have a business model that depends on full beds, then empty beds mean real justice. So where are we getting at? You know, so. Yeah.
I'm curious to the guys that were inside. Does leadership emerge? Can you, if there's a really young brother that's is doing wrong, I mean, is there the opportunity for you to try to right his path, or is that seen as you meddle in someone else's business? What's the culture like when someone needs mentorship?
The unfortunate part about it is that being in that mental state at that time is dangerous. You can't show no weakness, like you can't be the oddball, right? I mean, those who are isolated, they get picked on. Some of your loved ones, the first day they in there, you send them money, they kicking in their locker. And it's you against 10 people, what you gonna do? And you don't wanna worry y'all, so we just take it on the chin until we can't take it no more. Then you get them phone calls. But it's been happening way before that. What am I saying? This is gladiator school, ladies and gentlemen. Only the strongest survive behind them walls. And the system don't care what system. I'm talking about the prison system. They don't care. Y'all paying me $40,000, $50,000 a year to come in here and police some grown people that I done looked up their record. I know they about it. I'm gonna turn my head. I'm trying to go home. I got my kids waiting on me to do homework. You think I'm finna get into it and then y'all end up doing something to me? So that's why things are being allowed to happen so much, because people are afraid to police grown people, And you got men and women that are being guards. But yes, it's very hard to mentor someone in there because they don't want to listen. Even if they want to listen, they can't listen because then they don't want to be seen as uncool, because being uncool in prison is dangerous.
Thomas, how do you combat that in the programs that you run?
Well, one of the things that Governor Lee is involved in is the expansion of mentoring in the prisons, and so we are part of the faith-based initiative with Governor Lee, and so we've been providing mentors at Deborah Johnson Prison as well. Men of Valor has been providing them at DeBerry Special Needs. That's getting ready to roll across the state, and so hopefully we're able to expand those efforts, and we're going to be needing more volunteers that are going to want to go in and mentor men and women, women with women, men with men, trying to be that support for them while they're in. And they need somebody not really to tell them what to do, but just to listen, because they're going through great struggles, yes, in the core civic facilities, but yet also across the state prisons as well. All of the prisons in Tennessee have an issue with violence. All of the prisons in Tennessee have an issue with overdoses, with suicides, homicides. Extortion is in the state prisons too. Our jails are now maxed out, and we have backup state inmates that are in our county jails without any programming at all, and it's just a very serious problem. And then I'll just say, just as a side note, I do think maybe I shouldn't say this, but since we do get funding from the state legislature in 2022 passed a law to eliminate parole for a number of offenses and eliminate good behavior days. And we were very opposed to that and felt like it was going to cause problems in our prison system. And you have guys that are in there that have 30 and 40-year sentences, and no matter what they do, not one day will be knocked off their sentence. And so that is creating a very violent atmosphere.
A nothing to lose kind of situation.
It is a lose-lose, and it's just a very tragic situation because you have people in prison that are never going to get out, never. And they have nothing else to live for except just for themselves.
Are we teaching employable skills. The sheriff was talking about trades, the commissioner was talking about trades, and those are jobs that, we know you can make a good living, but
Right. There's a few prisons that have, I do know that Bledsoe, Site 2, Tricor is there. I know that South Central has a program, I think they make bicycles or repair wheelchairs and send them out. They make cabinets, they, do flooring. But as far as really teaching a trade, that's very, very limited. That's just, it's not much happening. Only about what they're learning is what they're going to receive on the tablets at this stage. There's just, very little opportunities. And when you have a prison system where you do not have staff, and that's also across the state, by the way, not just at CoreCivic, that's also in the state prisons. You don't have staff, you can't have programs. You just lock people down. That's what you have.
So those programs that you're talking about, I mean, those would be valuable skills, but the ones who have life sentences are the ones that work in those. So they never coming home. So somebody like myself who had a sentence where I have an out date, I'm signing up for a job, so I want to learn a trade while I'm in there. I went in when I was 22, right? So I didn't have any skills, so I want to learn skills. So I signed up South Central Wilson, the panel plant. I signed up for the panel plant. I signed up for the Wilson basketball plant. Well, the guys who had those positions had life sentences. They're never coming home. So it left somebody like me. Once I survived Gladiator School, trying to find my own way or whatever. So the answer is no. There's not any trades that's meaningful. I'm trying to find out what we can learn from a tablet. Those weren't in back then.
Look, y'all. There is nothing of benefit happening inside a prison at all. Mentally, the only thing that you're gonna get is some spirit. You're gonna grow spiritually because you're lonely and you're by yourself. So you run to God when them problems come. So spiritual health, that's why everybody get out singing Kumbaya when they leave out. So we spiritual. But mental, emotional, financial, none of that is going on. What I mean by financial, we preach workforce development, but nobody's hiring. We need you to be rehabilitated. We don't want you to go back, quote unquote. Yeah, we do, because we make money. We want you to go back. That's why we're going to provide you a whole lot of nothing. We need you. Join, what was that army? We need you in the army. Y'all don't understand. This is a chain reaction, and we could fix it. Ms. Clemens said, listen, y'all, we are the United States. All right, CoreCivic made a $2 billion. That's how much they built out. They took home 70 million. Okay, if y'all believe that, then whatever. What I'm saying is they making money, y'all. They need prisons. They have a contract with the state that the state said, hey, we're going to keep your beds full. How? How can you be a system that is supposed to be blind and all that Lady Justice stuff, but you tell them we're going to make sure we keep your beds full? That's why there's so much red tape. That's why people can't find jobs. That's why people can't find housing. That's why transportation is so elusive, because if I create an environment where you can't thrive, we're going to result to what's in our hearts. And what is that? Survival of the fittest, which means I'm going to do whatever's necessary to make sure that I can have the basic necessities of life. Okay? This is the truth. That's why we begging, we kicking down the door to provide programming. They ain't giving us the opportunity. We don't get funding. We don't get wrote into in the bill. I have a reentry program, 15-module digital curriculum. I started a program called the DREAM Initiative. Stands for Decreasing Recidivism Through Education and Mentorship. Why? Because I'm the poster child for reentry. There's not too many people in this country that has done what I've done post-prison. But you think, I ain't sitting on nobody's boards. You think I'm working? No, they don't want me. No, because I'm going to tell it like it is, like I'm doing now, because I'm got money. I don't need to sign with you and none of that. I'm straight. I can speak mine. and still gonna pay my bills. So yeah, this is what you're gonna get if you give people the opportunity to speak it like it needs to be spoke. And in this crowd today, we gonna tell the truth.
Yeah.
We gotta tell the truth.
We've got,
And I'm almost done. I'm finna be done. If we don't, we're gonna keep having meetings about the meeting that we had a meeting about the last year we had the meeting.
Yeah.
And nothing gonna get done, because let me tell you something, these legislatures and these senators, they know what's going on.
we've got about 5 minutes before we bring up the whole crowd and open it up to Q&A, but let's turn to optimism for 1 second, even if it's unrealistic. Is there a program out there? Is there a best practice that's happening in another country, another state?
Yeah, there are a lot of programs in the prisons. A lot of these are run by volunteers. And so volunteer organizations are in the prisons. I mean, we have programs at Trousdale and across many of the prisons, Riverbend as well, Deborah Johnson. I know Men of Valor has a lot of programs in the prisons.
What's your best one?
We're teaching cognitive behavioral life skills, and so we deal with that, with anger management, substance abuse. These are faith-based type courses that we're teaching. I know that Men of Valor has an honor pod, I believe at Trousdale. There's just a lot of, there's volunteer-led programs have been very helpful, and I would strongly encourage if you have a loved one to participate in the programs that are offered there. There are a lot of churches that go in and do things. Many nonprofits are involved.
Yeah,
helping them.
nonprofits, volunteers, and churches. Where's the state?
Well, they're at the end of the day, this is about dollars. And if you read an article just recently in the Tennessean that the Rutherford County Jail has state inmates, it costs them $93 a day. They're being paid by the state $41 a day. So when you have this kind of a system where we're not putting the money in, then it is difficult for them to have programming. It just comes down to they don't want to spend the money. That's the bottom line.
But if we have programs, and I understand the programs, but if the prisons are not being run correctly and we're constantly on lockdown, the prisons shut down. So you can go 2 years without having a prison if the staff is not correct and there's riots going on and the prisons are not being properly run. That negates the programs. They shut the programs down. So then,
Tim, I think we're time for our Q&A. Do you want to bring people to the microphones? It's probably the best way, fairest way for the crowd to hear the questions. So those of you that have questions and know you want to ask them, we got a podium here. We got one on the other side of the room.
Tim, you want us to move down here?
And that way we can all hear the question and the answer. And if our other panelists can come back up and rejoin us. Okay, who's going to start us off from the audience? Step on up to a live mic. And share your name if you could.
Hello, my name is Tim Hollis. My son Travis Hollis passed away last July 8th from a fentanyl overdose, and Travis hated fentanyl. That's how he lost his mom back in 2021. And often on the telephone, he would tell me he was the only white kid that didn't do drugs. But I'm sure somebody slipped him something without him knowing it. But one of my questions is, Earlier, they was talking about politicians and the governors making a profit from CoreCivic. By chance, do judges make a profit by filling the beds of prisons? Because my son was innocent. I promise he was. He was 23 when he passed away. He was 18 when the incident happened, supposedly happened. But there was no evidence against him, but yet the judge sentenced him to 6 years. So that's really what I got to say.
The answer is hell yeah.
Anyone else with questions? Let's kind of form a line so we can get as many of you addressed as possible. Come on up.
So my name's Fallon Ploshik, and I'm a senior here at Cumberland. Oh, I apologize. Can you hear me now? Cool. So my name's Fallon Ploshik, and I'm a senior here at Cumberland. And I noticed throughout this whole, discussion that we were talking a lot on the bills and the propositions that have made their way through Senate, but we haven't really touched on the ones that haven't made it through and why. I keep thinking of House Bill 674 that just recently got stricken, and essentially it was created to put prisoners in closer proximity with their family that go through hardships. And one of the stipulations on this bill was that if prisoners wanted to request movement, that they had to complete the necessary programs within the prisons. A lot of these prisons don't provide programs, so it's like a double-edged sword there. I just wonder, what can we do to make these policies more airtight? How can we go through and, have these propositions and these questions don't get raised? We don't have to worry about programs in prison. We don't have to worry about good days. How can we make these solutions more airtight to where they work?
One thing I can answer for my son, if they have any kind of strike against them, they're not allowed to do any kind of education, any kind of work. They have to, they're not even allowed to go outside.
Mm-hmm. And then that kind of, oh, go ahead, I'm sorry.
So to answer, I don't know specifically on that bill in the House, but I can tell you, as I tour the different prisons and such across the state, I'm almost going to say there's not a truth in advertising when they say, in prisons we offer this program, that program, that program. It might be offered, but it's not implemented. Not at least to a point where I believe that an inmate can take advantage of it. There are some that are working, I'm going to say adequately, but there's a lot. When I go up there and I say how many people actually went through that program and they did not get the hours that they're claiming that they did or that they should have gotten.
I'll just add to that on the legislative side, because I've introduced multiple pieces of legislation to try to cut off the pipeline to privatize prisons and try to limit them to that one facility here in Tennessee. I've worked with Senator Jeff Yarbrough, who's here in the back. I've worked with other people, even across the aisle. The caucus chairman for the Republican Party in the House, like was said earlier, he also opposes privatized prisons, and he worked with me on it. But if you want to pass legislation, it starts here. Right. Tim Leeper worked with these gentlemen, Senator Pody and Representative Boyd last year, by burning up the carpet in the halls of the legislature, telling his personal story. Now, I realize that everybody doesn't have the opportunity to do that, but you're here on a work night, spending your time on an issue that you really care about, that matters to a lot of Tennessee families, yours and others. You organize like this and come to the state legislature and sit down across from me, my colleagues, and those who aren't here and tell your personal story. That's how you get legislation passed. Because unfortunately, a lot of legislators, unless they hear that personal story, unless something has impacted them personally, they're just going to ignore it unless it's their own priority. So this room, mobilizing and coming to the Cordell Hull building and the state capitol and telling the legislature you're going to hold us accountable unless we do something, that's how you pass legislation. And look, the bill last year was important. That's an incremental step. That's a baby step, but it's in the right direction. So we can take bigger steps, but it starts in this room and takes its way to Nashville.
Hi, good evening. My name is Christine Williams. My son, Sylvanus Cole, was institutionalized at Core Civics, and he passed away of a fentanyl overdose after serving nearly 10 years. And over the last few years, he passed away in 2023, but over the last few years, there was no visitors. We had just come out of COVID, and there was no staff to even staff visitation. So there was no outsiders coming into the institution. So I just spoke out publicly about maybe a month ago about my son's passing because I was so destroyed. I couldn't speak. I couldn't do anything but just cry. But what I want to say is that the year that he passed in 2023 of a fentanyl overdose, no one called me or said anything. A random God called me on the phone and asked me what my son's name was. And I told them, and they said, oh, well, he's deceased. And I was on the interstate, barely could get off the interstate because I just didn't know what was happening. Well, 2 years before that, he had a scabies outbreak. And I started conversation with the head guy over the medical of the state of Tennessee named Kenneth Wiley. We talked back and forth. He made me feel like he was going to help. He gave me his personal phone number. I called him day and night just trying to get my son medical care for the outbreaks that he had. Yes, they do have contraband in there. There was a cell phone. I started getting pictures of my son, his skin. He didn't even look the same. He had palsy. He was very sick. And I feared that he would not make it home because of something like that, but not a fentanyl overdose. He didn't get out and go down to the corner market and purchase fentanyl. He got it from someone coming into that facility, whether there was staff, guard, could have been the warden. I don't know, but I know that they shouldn't have been there. And the irony to this whole story about my son is that during the discovery, I actually found out that my son had a drug overdose 7 days before the fatal overdose, and nothing was done. They didn't take him out of population. The only way they found my son, because there was no officers in the pod, nowhere near my son, all the inmates started beating and beating and beating because they needed help. And finally someone heard the beating and came in. They had no Narcan like they did the first time 7 days ago. They came in and my son lay dying on a prison floor. I don't know what he suffered. I know he suffered, and I know that the cellmate told me that he didn't even know how to do CPR. He said he was just beating on him, beating on his chest. There was no buttons to push. There was no inmates nowhere. They said they were staffed. It's called ghost employees. They're not there. My son died in that institution. And when you talk about extorting, they would call me on the phone, and to this day, I can't even pay the guy to cut my grass with a Cash App because I was sending money everywhere, and they cut me off, and I could never have a Cash App again. And I've done nothing wrong. My son did not deserve to die in a Core Civics state institution because he did not get a death sentence. And when he passed, he had 2 months to come home, and I hadn't seen my son in 5 years. So I want to tell my story. I'm not ashamed to tell my story. That is my son, and he should not have died on the floor of a jail cell where they were supposed to rehabilitate him and come home to be able to be with his son, my grandson, 18 years old, just graduated from high school this year and knew that his daddy was going to be here to watch him graduate. He is a student at MTSU and a fine young man, but without a father, and been without a father for years. Thank you for listening to me. It's my story.
You are 100% right. You are 100% right.
My name is Brenda Franklin. My name is Brenda Franklin, and I would like to know why Core Civic was not made a landlord the day after the riots this year. I have a son there too. He's been in isolation since February because they were threatening to rape or kill him. And when he went before the board that investigated this, they told him that he didn't have enough proof. More or less, I guess he had to have the act actually happen before he had anything to complain about. This goes on. Everybody in here that's got an inmate who is in prison at Trousdale, they have been through what I've been through. It's cost me thousands of dollars to keep my son alive. And I know this, and I know he's telling the truth. And he's not somebody to just throw away. He's a carpenter. He has skills. There is nothing he can do except sit there and read books day in and day out. And then they'll come through and they'll take them, and I have to buy more. I can't tell you how many thousands of dollars I've spent on clothes, shoes, and things he has for a little while. Then it's gone, he has nothing again. Something needs to be done. Private prison is not the way to go. Private prison is the same as private execution, but they don't want to execute them because the money tree's gone. This money, I do not understand why it is in Tennessee as the headquarters, and we have it run, and I'm pretty sure we've got politicians up here in Nashville that are getting dividends from this private run institution. This is the reason a lot of our ancestors left England, being put in debtor's prison for things very lengthy prison sentences for minor offenses, some of them not so minor, but they don't deserve to be treated like dogs.
Hi, my name is April. I am actually here representing an agency that I work for called Disability Rights Tennessee. We are the protection and advocacy agency for persons with disabilities in the state of Tennessee. And through my work, we have had many cases and individuals that we've investigated and advocated for who have been in the prisons. And I will say by far, Core Civic, especially Trousdale, has been the worst. And so my question is, we've talked about programs in the prisons, we've talked about reentry when people come out, but what we haven't talked about is the barriers that people with mental, medical, and physical disabilities face when coming out. We don't give them the opportunity to participate in those programs in the prisons. We don't give them the resources they need for when they leave prison. They don't leave with enough medications, they don't have health insurance, they don't have doctors, they don't have mental health care. I've met many inmates who stage 3, stage 4 cancer, and they don't have access to those services and resources. Not just in the prison, they don't have it if they happen to get out. So my question for the panel is, what can be done that can be done within the prisons, as well as things and services and programs that can be provided to those individuals to give them the opportunity for rehabilitation when they get out?
I can tell you from my point of view, and from visiting some of the prisoners, some of those individuals don't need to be in prison. They need to be elsewhere where they can get help, they can get their medication and such, some of the things that they've done. it shouldn't have landed them in a spot where I believe you called it gladiator school. They're learning the wrong things. We're not helping them. We're just extending, and we're putting the wrong people sometimes behind bars.
Yes, and they're actually more at risk of being victimized by the, like I was literally recently just at Trousdale and met an individual who was refusing his mental health medications, but he wasn't safe. He was somebody is gonna do something to him because he was just not the kind of person you want in your personal space.
You know, I respect all of the legislators and reps up here, but y'all, ain't nothing gonna happen until you beat their door down. That's it. If you're not down there at the legislature meeting with these people and trying to get them to understand what's going on, like, this is great. This is a start. Like my brother said, this is a start, but then it has to transition and translate to something different. And that's for half these people down here all the way at the legislation beating on doors. I see many of them. You know, this is time where we network and get, and if we organize the right way, I mean, this is a very diverse group. If this group right here popped up down there, oh, it's some phone calls and stuff gonna be happening. They're gonna be like, man, these people for real. This the only way we're gonna change laws is through legislation, y'all.
I just want to add one thing about that issue, and you raised a good point about requiring somebody to take their medication. You know, if they provide the medication, that's the baseline. They're not going to go above that simple contractual requirement. But you also have to understand the way that Core Civic works internally. And so when they make an inmate take their medication, that is called a use of force under their own policies. And they get docked. That Core Civic facility gets docked for its numbers of uses of force. And those uses of force count against that administration's bonus system. So they get no bonus or less bonus the more uses of force they have. And so they're disincentivized to make someone take their medication because they have to classify it as a use of force, and then they lose money on that. That's how backwards this system is and how rigged these contracts are. They get to decide, and the contract monitor is supposed to see that. However, the contract monitor generally has an inherent conflict of interest. For instance, in one instance, an employee of the county government was the contract monitor, and the county government's being paid by Core Civic for the use of that facility. So there's a whole bunch of issues where it's just a vicious cycle that does not benefit the inmates. It's all profit driven, again, getting back to the initial problem with privatized prisons.
I don't have a question, but I do have something to say. My name is Jada X, and I'm a statewide organizer with Free Hearts, but I'm also a mother. My son is incarcerated in Northeast Correctional Complex. I live in Memphis. That's 8 hours away from where I live. Even though that's a big distance, I fight to keep him covered, connected, and alive. I want to begin by offering my deepest condolences to those who have lost a loved one inside TDOC. I want to extend my heartfelt love to those who still have loved ones caged within TDOC. I want to thank Tim for bringing us together, because it is about organizing. It's about all of us being here together and moving to Cordell Hull. I want to also speak plainly about this. We've heard people tonight use inmate, prisoner, offender, criminal, things like that. I want to be clear. That's harmful language. It dehumanizes our loved ones. James, my son, is a father, he's a brother, he's a human being. I want to also say this. We have to, especially those in power, change the way we speak about them. Because if we don't, then we can't even consider true justice for them. While we're naming the harm inside TDOC, we also have to speak on the Tennessee Board of Parole. TDOC holds our people in. The parole board keeps them from coming home. They may be separate agencies, but they are part of the same machine. James, my son, was first denied parole in 2024. Over the next 12 months, he completed over 60 classes, earned 40 certificates, had 0 write-ups, deepened his faith and accountability, and still he was denied again in 2025. Here's what hurts. 2 of the parole board members in 2024 said he should go home. 2024. I just said he completed over 60 classes, 40 certificates, 0 write-ups. Those same 2 parole board members denied him in 2025, and they cited it for seriousness of the offense. We need to change that. So the offense didn't change, y'all. James changed. The system is hypocritical. Nothing in that is about rehabilitation. He almost lost hope, but he has a deep faith. And I thank these brothers right here on the front row for going inside the prison and talking to my son and all of the brothers inside. I want to say this. James survived, right? But Tim's son didn't. A lot of y'all other loved ones didn't. What connects our story, though, and this is the truth, TDOC is where harm happens. The parole board is where it continues to be permanent. So together, they uphold a system that punishes growth, silences accountability, and keeps our people behind bars long after they have transformed. But I'm encouraged that people tonight are speaking about coming together to pass legislation. I'm with Free Hearts, I mentioned that. We've already begun some of that work through Separate Acts, Separate Facts Coalition, and Representative Pody was given an example of being with someone and you'll go to the store and your friend does something and he comes back in the car and you don't know anything about it. But he did something, he committed a crime. You're charged with that. Criminal responsibility. If someone was murdered, felony murder. My son was facing that. Thankfully, he did not get sentenced that way. So I want to say this again. It's important for us to change policy, but policy alone will not save lives. We need presence. We need pressure. We need organizing. Because while the law catches up, our people are dying behind those walls. So I'm not here really for pity. Honestly, I'm not. I'm here for truth. Say Kylan's name. See James's humanity. Speak with care. Stand with families and organize with us across the state and beyond, because our silence will not save them, but our presence just might. Thank you.
Well, that's hard to follow. My name is Michelle. I am a formerly incarcerated woman in state system as well as the federal system. This is empowering. But the thing with it is all of us are on the same page. That's why we're here. My question is, what are we going to do when we walk out them doors? Are we going to leave here on fire and it sizzle out in a day or two? Or are you going to start blowing up your senator's phone? Are you going to start speaking out? Are you going to start using people first language? It's a whole lot easier to deny food to a criminal or an inmate than it is to an incarcerated person. It might be one and the same. We talk about we want to give them second chances. We got to give them back some dignity first, and that starts in society with second chances and not permanent punishment. Once they've served their time, man, time served, you know. I also have a son that is incarcerated. He is in South Central, and his job, he takes care of a 67-year-old veteran that is wheelchair bound. The reason that this man is wheelchair bound is because whatever his medical condition was, he has an electronic type device that shocks his nerves in order for his legs to work. The battery on that device went dead over a year ago. TDOC refuses to have that battery replaced, so this man is now confined to a wheelchair. He is a veteran. He fought for this country. So my son pushes him where he needs to go, to Pill Line, Law Library, Rec Yard, helps him get to the shower, because, and we know that's a core civic, we all know it's rotten to the core, because they don't want to pay the money. This man's health has consistently declined to he is wheelchair bound now. Why? Just because you're incarcerated does not mean you don't deserve basic health care. So what are we going to do? How are we going to change it? How many people have to die? How do we get the public outside of this room? How do we get their attention? Spread the word, awareness, speak up, tell it to your faith leaders, tell it to your government, tell it to your co-workers, tell it to your mama, your daddy, your auntie, your uncle that believes they done the crime, they can do the time. Okay, do the time, but let that time have some justice in it. The system is not broken. It's working exactly as it was designed to work. A continuous will to fatten the pockets and fatten the bank accounts. You want to find out why it keeps on happening like it does? Start looking into those personal bank accounts.
My name is Brenda Spitzbarth, and I'm here because my son is in immediate danger. He's at Turney Center, and I've made some calls, and now they're not answering the phone for me. His tablet was smashed, so a good fellow that was inside with him slid it he's in a solitary confinement now to be as safe as they can keep him. And somebody slid their tablet through the little flap there so he could call me the other day. And he said, "Mom, it's just a matter of time till they storm this door." What I had been telling him was, you do those 2 ways, Dustin. You do those 2 ways. You get with counselors. You get with internal affairs. You need some drug treatment. My son is a drug addict. He's in prison as a repeat offender because he was stealing to get drugs over and over and over. He's a drug addict. When he went in prison, he's still a drug addict, and he is getting in trouble over and over. He can't get programs because he can't straighten up long enough. He gets them after him. I've been extorted, but right now he's in that cell, and I don't know what to do. So my question to you is, how do I keep my son safe, and how do I get him mental health and drug addiction program? How do I get him there? I called my representative, is Tom Stennett. I called him, and he called the prison a few months ago, and he said, call me back, and he said, they're going to put him in that program called TCOM. Well, they went to Dustin that day. You want in TCOM? He said, yeah. Well, a couple of weeks later, they come out, we canceled that. He probably got in trouble with drugs. I don't know. But it blows my mind that a young man that is an addict can't get in the program until he gets clean. What do I do to get help for my boy? That's my question.
And that's a real question. So if you would like, and you pass that information to me, I would look into it tomorrow. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Melissa Shala. I'm here with my husband, Nick. My story is a little different, but it all connects. I live directly across from Charlesville Turner Correctional Center. As everybody knows, on June 8th, during the riot, my family and neighbors were terrified. One family even fled their home with their children in the middle of the night. For us, this isn't theory, it's a daily life. I've asked my local officials, mayors, commissioners, but instead of speaking with me, they had their lawyers send me a letter saying that they can't comment, how to keep us safe. I also spoken with Representative Slater that he is not opposed to transferring Charlesville back into TDOC. I also spoke to Senator Hale in person. I also spoke to District Attorney Lawson. Anyhow, we're not only worried about our safety, we're deeply concerned about the human rights of the people inside the facility and the moral cost of allowing a private company to profit from their suffering. Now that we know this, just on August 25, I listened to our first response committee in Hartsville, and our sheriff, Russell, said that we're short 7 officers, while also being forced to transport core civic persons out of state to Kentucky, Ohio, and Georgia. He said that since January 2023, there have been about 250 indictments, which means even more transports and less manpower for our community. On top of that, during the June riot, our deputies were the first ones called, outnumbered, standing outside of a prison of 2,700 persons, men, knowing backup were hours away. Because the news said they were right there, they weren't. We were listening to the police scanner. My question is this, Senator Potty, do you believe it is right or even safe that our small county sheriff's department is forced to babysit a private prison? And if not, what should change to protect our officers and residents like me who live right across the road, and that a person can run from the prison and be at our house in less than 3 minutes?
I understand you are right there. You're with Core Civic, you're with the prisoners, and you're right. Right now there's almost 2,000 individuals, men, just yards from where you live. You've got the right to feel safe in your own home no matter where you are in this state. So the question you asked, is it up to the sheriff to do it, or who should be responsible? The sheriff is the top law enforcement agency in any county, and I'm sitting next to the sheriff right here. That they are the top law. If they don't have the resource to do it, then perhaps we need to look at the state to say, if their guards aren't there, how can we support the sheriff? Something along those lines. That question's never been brought to me before, but the sheriff might have a comment. I don't know.
Well, it wasn't just Ray, okay? Numerous counties responded over there, including Wilson County, Sumner County, Macon County. You're living on hell's doorstep, quite frankly. But that prison got off to a bad start. I don't know how long you've been there. And I know the commissioner will agree with me on this. When I was director of the Sheriff's Association, when the call went out that we got a new prison, we need to fill it up. Well, I won't tell you what they did. They filled it up with all the wrong people. They sent the worst of the worst over there. In the meantime, some of the families here who are affected, your loved ones got incarcerated with those people. So it's their responsibility to safely house inmates and care for them, especially their medical, their food, and just a general safety. So when that fails, it fails at the top and fails all the way down. And when it's overcrowded, understaffed, bad things are going to happen. Well, first of all, Ray Russell and I served together a long time as sheriffs. He's very capable. kind of burnt out with the situation over there. As a matter of fact, he's worn out with it. The county, though, I think, I would like someday to see them change the name of that thing. Maybe the Cumberland River Prison. But it's stigmatized now, and everything that happens over there is going to be Charleston County Attorney Center. I don't know if you own your home, but it'd be hard to sell your home. Well, maybe the nuclear plant will come down and fall on some of it, but I don't know.
I didn't say this, but the day after the riot, I talked to one of the commissioners, and he said, oh, I used to work there, and there was just about probably 4 or 5 guards there for 24/700 people. And that didn't make me feel better. Why people need other people? You can't have 2,700 people and 4 guards. That is just ridiculous. And when I started asking questions, I mean, even a neighbor told me, you better be careful because it's the smallest county, and you asking questions might be a problem. But I tend to not care about that, so.
Good evening. My name is Robert Richmond. I spent 31 years in the penal system. I've been out now 4 years by the grace of Jesus Christ. I do have a question, but it's rhetorical. What's your name, sir? Clemens. Mr. Clemens. A good enough case being made. My question is the murder rate, the continued to this day rape rate, the fentanyl death rate, etc., etc., is that not a good enough case? Hard core evidence can be produced for every bit of this. Numbers don't lie. Anybody can do it. It's public information. There is an answer. And it's not just us getting together and storming the gates. Like Raheem? What's your name, brother? Robert, I'm sorry. Like he was talking about. I'm sorry. My first 6 years of incarceration was exactly what he said, gladiator school. I was green as grass when I got locked up. I grew up in 2 families. Middle class. Got drunk one night, went out with a couple guys, and we ended up killing somebody. Don't ask me why. Don't know. To this day. But I did. And like I said, if it wasn't for the grace of Jesus Christ, I wouldn't be standing here now. I'd die in prison. I know what's going on behind them walls. My first 6 years was gladiator school, and I ended up taking another man's life because of it. I spent 7 years and 9 months on maximum security getting to know the Lord. He is the one that changed me. It is possible for rehabilitation to take place in the system. I'm proof of it. I went to maximum security at 25 years old with a 6th grade education. In May, I graduated a bachelor's degree. Not to debate, not to contradict anything anybody in here has said, but programs are offered in the state system. In core civic, they are offered. The problem is, just like that brother said, if you don't have a peace of mind behind them walls, you don't have the mind to educate yourself. I don't care what extent education is on them tablets. If a man is not safe, he is not going to retain the information to learn. He's not going to be able to do it. I am proof of that. I could not do it. There is an answer. The answer is this, to any ear that will hear: zero tolerance against gang activity, period. That is the answer, because that is why a man such as myself can't get educated, because he's got to defend himself. I know a brother, personally, who left Turney Center, went to Site 2, Brushy Mountain, Bledsoe, got a job in the wood plant, was doing good, even able to send money to his wife or the kids. Went to special needs for 1 week, came back, and a policy was changed that he was not aware of in the wood plant. The placement of his tools. He went about his normal routine, was written up, fired, and sent to Trousdale. What? Model inmate. Sent to Trousdale, was stuck 8 times by another man for that man to get out of Trousdale. A man had to stick another man 8 times for him, the one who'd done the sticking, to get shipped. He went to Max, but he got shipped. He was safe behind 4 walls. That's ridiculous. Zero tolerance against gang activity. They need to be locked down 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. I'm sorry, that's hard. I spent 31 years in prison, but that's the only way that it's going to happen. There needs to be prisons. Trousdale should have been the prison that they were sent to, but they should have been locked down. They don't need a place that they can congregate and plan things. Now, the question is, does TDOC want a safer prison system? They have to answer that question. We know, but they have to answer that question. Somebody needs to say yes or no. Somebody in TDOC with the power needs to be the one to say yes or no. Education will change a man's life. Education will change a woman's life. But if they can't have the peace of mind to do it, they won't get educated.
Good evening. My name is John Brewer. I spent 16 years in the Tennessee Department of Corrections, and I was released from prison July 8th, 2018. And I just want to say that nobody is coming to help us. Legislation is fine. Policy is fine. But no one is coming in to save us. I heard someone mention extortion. They have to stop hindering the Nation of Islam from coming into prison, because we can curb the extortion rate. I've seen it done. I am a product of that. I was a convicted murderer. I was a heroin addict. I was a robber and a kidnapper. And I went to prison, and they found me addicted to drugs at that time. And through the program that ministry brought, it was able to change my life. Men respect the Nation of Islam, black and white. It is one of the few organizations that can go inside of the prison and affect real change. Yeah, they have programs just to say it's a program, but it's not effective. But the Nation of Islam affects a real change. So why would you want to keep me out? Or why would you want to keep any man out who was formerly incarcerated that has proven that they have changed their life? Who is will be more successful at reaching the minds of the men in prison than a person that has been formerly incarcerated? When I go in, they see me as one of them. They knew me when they called me St. Louis. They knew me when I was using drugs. And when I go in, the ones that they let me in when they don't kick me out for some reason, they say, wow, man, I'm proud of you. You're doing good. And we encourage them because one of them said that they are afraid. It's not good to be nice, or it's not good to be friendly. It's looked upon as weak, but it's something about this teaching that we have and this program. It has a proven track record to make men strong and be able to walk around and say that I'm living a positive life and not be afraid. That's what we bring. And we encourage the institution to come to the service to hear what we're teaching, because for some reason they're afraid of us. For some reason, the warden is afraid of us, that every time we try to go into prison, I don't know what they think we're going to do, they hinder us and stop us. We say, warden, come listen to us. Assistant warden, come listen to us. Senator, come listen to us while we're in the prison. And right now, we need help continuing to go in because they tell us that it's at the warden's discretion. And so we hit a ceiling right there. We meet all the criteria. We follow all the rules. We keep a clean track record. We've never had any infractions, but it's always some way to stop the Nation of Islam from coming in. It's always some way that the chaplain is saying that we can't come in or we can't do this. We are the ones working with the gangs. We can call out a blood organization, a Crip organization, and have them in the same room and settle differences. Why keep us out? We can have gangster disciples and vice lords in the same room and can talk and settle beefs. We can have people who are being extorted and on drugs can come to us. And by us having relationship with so-called gang leaders, we can say, hey, let's stop that. Let's cut that out. And we get that type of respect. To echo the words of Sister Jada, she said, presence, which we provide, and pressure. We putting pressure and we're organizing while we are in there. And my question to the panel is, how can you help us continue to do the great work that we've been doing? We've been going in prisons for over 30 years on our own dime, running up and down that highway, getting new brakes every year, new tires, new engines, new batteries, cars getting tore up. And we don't ask anybody for any money. All we want to do is go in there and help. All I want to do is have the opportunity to give somebody what was given to me. And I know for a fact that it will help Caucasians too. Contrary to popular belief, this teaching transcends race. We have Caucasian people that all the time, and they love it. So my question is, how can you help us when we hit that ceiling and is at the warden's discretion, when we meet all the criteria that is recommended for us to continue to go inside the prison? Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. My brother, I appreciate you. Appreciate your words. So I was blessed with the opportunity the governor put together a board by the name of the Tennessee Resource Board, and I'm one of the members. And a couple of my members are in the audience. And so get with me. That's what we do. We advocate for volunteerism, and we meet, every 3 months. Actually, we got a meeting coming up, and I would love to get you to come before the board. And we have representatives, we got commissioners, we got everybody that comes to that meeting, so I can get you in there. All right.
I can bear witness. When I was at South Central, man, whenever we knew that brothers were coming up from Nashville, whenever we heard that the brothers were coming up, the compound, almost anything negative stopped. Months leading up, it was a peaceful compound when they knew that the brothers were coming. And after they left a change in impact. So I know for a fact that when the brothers come, it's a change. Any kind of extorting that was going on, any kind of stuff that was moving, then the compound quiet, it was quiet. So I can't bear witness to that. Well, and that's said they wasn't able to come back repeatedly. So if they can get a regular time to come back inside any kind of I guess schedule or whatever.
Hang on. Hey, good evening. Hold up for y'all leave now. Y'all really want to hear this. Well, good evening, everyone. I just want to thank whoever put this together because we got to have more of these all across the state. So I want to commend, and my heart goes out to you. My name is Raheem Buford. I'm the founder and director of the Unheard Voices Outreach. I'm from Nashville, Tennessee. And before I say what I want to say, I want to know by show of hands, how many of you love someone in prison? Great. I'm here because I survived 26 years in the state of Tennessee, from 18 to 44 at 7 different prisons all across this state. My brother Robert was in prison for over 13 years. He developed some kind of drug habit in prison. He was released in 2020 after serving 13 years, and he was actually innocent. My nephew did the crime. He died less than 5 months being out from fentanyl poisoning. My young mentee, June the 7th of this year, LaRon Lumpkin, 25 years old, was found in his cell, not breathing. He died from fentanyl poisoning, a Whiteville correction facility. I just want to sit with that because this is an epidemic that has been killing people in Tennessee prisons for over 3 or 4 years now. And the Department of Correction has known about this. This isn't new. I heard one of the representatives speaking about, we can't build like new prisons. We couldn't build new prisons. And I do have 3 questions, but I need to put this on the mic for all of you who don't know what's going on. We have nearly 14,000 parole hearings every year. 14,000. less than 3,000, less than 2,000 people actually are granted parole. So I want you to understand that the problem of overcrowding is not really a problem of overcrowding. It's a problem where the Tennessee Parole Board members are refusing to grant parole. We need to highlight that issue because people will have you to think that we need more prisons. We actually need to let more people go. So I have 3 questions. My first question is for Representative Boyd, Representative Clemens, and it is, will you two commit to proposing a community bill with Tennesseans who love someone in prison, all of you who just raised your hand, with the Mark and the Matthew Christians who are in this audience right now, because Jesus said, visit those who are in prison, and Mark said, Mark 5, set the captives free. That's a fact. That's the Bible. So that we can reduce the prison population by at least 30% in the next 3 years. Now, before you answer, got another question. This is for the former commissioner, and I want to thank you for being on the panel because I heard some things that you know that can help us make these prisons safer. Now, we want to know why Commissioner Strider isn't here listening to these family members who all have legitimate concerns about the safety and the welfare of their loved ones in prison. We can't even have a conversation. And to echo what the brothers just said, and I'm happy to give the evidence. I have emails from the Tennessee Department of Corrections saying, you know, it's better that you just continue to work in the community. But it's brothers like myself and the others who spoke, and many other formerly incarcerated persons who are in this crowd who are successful. So it's not like people just getting out and going back to prison. It's a lot of successful people that just don't want to put themselves out there like that. But my question is, former commissioner, will you participate in a special effort to center the humanity and restorative, transformative practices that we can perhaps implement into the prison systems within Tennessee Department of Corrections? Would you be willing to do that with the backing of not just the people here, but all across this state? Consider that. Y'all, we gotta say yes now. Last. And last, to the beautiful audience members who love someone in prison, to help bridge the gap to bring your loved ones home. Thank you.
All right, I want to go ahead and give a 2-minute warning. I know that we're trying to get everybody out of here, but I also have to be respectful of our panel's time and also our audience's time. So what I would ask is just if we could wrap this up, and then I'll do a quick closing announcement, and then I'll dismiss us. And so I'm going to go ahead and give you the last question, but if you could, please be respectful of the 2 minutes that we have. And we'll try to have some of the questions answered in the outside, but I just can't hold everybody for an unresolved amount of time. So thank you.
My name is Tori, and I don't know, of course, I know a lot of you probably dealt with Hartsville, the prison. I've got a husband that's an inmate, and of course I had to discuss with him. I was terrified to come up here and speak on his behalf because he's tried to speak himself being in that prison. They can't get word out to describe what has been going on in the prison, but my husband worked in intake for 2.5 years, and it breaks my heart. Sorry, guys. Some of your loved ones that were deceased, and this is the God's honest truth, my husband was one of the people that were in intake. As they were brought in deceased, they were placed in a holding cell, And it was my husband's responsibility. They would actually hand him and some other inmates white suits to put on to go in and clean up the decomp at your loved ones. And my husband's a disabled vet. And of course, he said that after he has been there, he said, I had to tap back in to my Desert Storm training just to stay alive. So I want you all to know, Core Civic is horrible. And you're talking trauma. When you have young children that you're having to explain when you can't find out if they're well or if they're taken care of or if they're deceased and their phones are shut off. And then you've got rioting going on. You've got stuff going on. You're hearing somebody has died, and then you're hearing ambulance calls and stuff over the police department radios, and you don't know if it's your loved one, and you can't get through and can't get answers. And then another thing that bothers me, if they get a write-up, if they tick off somebody that's upset with them and something don't go in the guard's way and they get a write-up, they can put down that they don't get any days served at all for that month. They can turn in 0. How is it if they're serving day for day, 30 days a week, and going through all this trauma that these men have been going through? And I don't even know about any other prisons through Core Civic of how they do, because I'm just dealing with my own loved one. And praise God that he's still alive, because these families that have lost their children, I wouldn't know how to go. I'm sorry. But just knowing what I knew, and like I said, my husband's life's on the line because this has been told. But he begged me, he said, look, you've got to speak because I can't. So just to let you all know, Core Civic contracts need to end, because these families are going to continue this trauma. We have children. My son here has had trauma. And I have to tell him when we don't hear and go weeks from not hearing from my husband, knowing that he's okay, I'm having to explain to him, I don't know what's going on. You call the prison, we'll put this to. And then whenever you try to get a visit, especially through Hartsville, it's like trying to pull out teeth, because you've got to go and you got to type this thing in, and maybe you get a visit, maybe you don't. Then people drive hours on end and show up, and they're turned away telling them, oh, they got in trouble yesterday, but then again, we've done paid for gas and fuel and motel cost and flight cost. There was a lady that literally had to fly, I think, 6 hours to see her child, and when she got there, they said, oh, I'm sorry. Well, she's out her airplane money and her, everything that she's went out. Like I said, something needs to change. Absolutely, because it's going to continue to happen. And that's the reason why we have contacted news. We have contacted senators. We have contacted mayors and talking about the judges being involved. Absolutely. Absolutely, because the judge in our county literally sent a letter stating that he wanted my husband sent to Trousdale Turner because he's a disabled vet, couldn't afford an attorney. And of course, I'm on Social Security disability, couldn't afford an attorney, so we had a public defender. And most of the time, they want you to do the least that they can do, because just to get you sent on, because they're going home. So, like I said, I pray for every single one of the inmates that are in there, and the families too, because not only the inmates are going through this trauma, we are, and our kids are. Thank you.
There is something I want to say. I have did my history, and sadly, Core Civic is turning into another Alcatraz. Yes, you may be wondering why I'm saying this. Alcatraz has the most death rate in the entire United States. If it does not get stopped now, it'll pretty much be another Alcatraz. More people will die, and more people will be unhappy. So I want to know one thing. When will you finally do something and stop making us all worry? Because as you heard, there's been more people here that have lost more people. Nobody's getting heard. So, when will something finally be done? Or will it just be quiet, as it always will be? Because I am now 19 years old. I have lost my dad when I was 12. From a corrupted police officer that told me at the age of 12 that if they're not catch the person in the act, that'd be best I'd sit with a damn baseball bat. That's not police. That's someone that's not doing their job right. Thank you for hearing me out.
Hey, everybody, I want to say thank you for your time tonight to come out. I thank our panel for coming up. I'm appreciative of your time. You've been here for a good while. Also, the audience and the participants that have questions, I would encourage you to find some of these folks as they're transitioning out. I'm sorry, I just can't. It's not fair to everybody to hold them, for unresolved amount of time. However, thank you for being here. I think there's a lot of connections that have been made. Thank you, Demetria, for you to come and host this. My wife asked me in the back, she says, are you pleased, with what's happened tonight? And the answer is yes, because the goal all this time was to have conversation that could lead to legislative change. And legislative change is good for all of us in this room that have loved ones that are incarcerated. So thank you so much for your time. We're dismissed, and if my panelists, as they come off stage, I've just got something for them to say thank you for your time tonight. So thank you all. We're dismissed, and you're welcome to exit the back.